Signing day 2022 was filled with drama as usual, as we had more flips than a gymnastics meet and some major surprises along the way. Now, Alabama and Nick Saban dominated, shocker there, while Kirby Smart continued to add to the monster he's building in Athens. But outside of the typical big dogs, my biggest winner was Oregon. And after they lost momentum when top quarterback Dante Moore decided to go to UCLA, they were able to flip 4 4-stars and a 5-star from major brand name institutions going into year 2 under Dan Lanning. They went from top 15 to top 5 in a flash. We also saw new Oklahoma head coach Brent Venables be able to keep the wagon upright despite a tough first year, and Mario Cristobal added the big guys he needed up front to try and get Miami back where they belong. Now, 2 sneaky days were had by 2 recent head coaching hires, and I mean very recent. Auburn and Hugh Freeze had a big day as they jumped into the top 20 out of nowhere with a lot of space left on the roster. And Nebraska, with new head coach Matt Rule, made some surprising noise as well. Now, overall, there was a lot of the same names that we normally see at the top. And even in the world of NIL, the rich will continue to get richer so much their names should be richer. But the biggest key is not just who can get them, but who can develop them. That is what will determine how much success they have on the field. I'm going to bring in my co-host, former Michigan quarterback, and he's wearing a Hanukkah sweater.
Happy Hanukkah.
An ugly Hanukkah sweater. I want to make sure we get that right. All right, I said Christmas, that's on me, okay? Now, you're not Jewish though, right?
Not that I know.
Not that you know.
But
maybe,
I can be today. I can celebrate and participate.
You should, everybody. Yeah. Everybody, ELE, everybody.
Look, the menorah's coming out of Ben Shapiro's head here. There's a lot to celebrate.
There's a lot to celebrate.
There's a lot to celebrate.
And I know and I know there's a lot of people right now who aren't working for the rest of the week, probably sleeping in, maybe not going to see this until we're done. To you, I hope you got some good sleep. And I hope you woke up and got to see the family and cook bacon and pet the dogs and do all type of stuff. But I got to bring in my other co-host who's wearing
Sweet Baby Gang, baby.
Sweet Baby Gang gear here. It's very interesting. My brother Blane Crane, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver, and today he's going to unveil the second version of his new segment called It's Mid, which I'm super duper jacked and tan for, even underneath this tree ugly Christmas sweater. So, guys, signing day 2022. We all know this is the real signing day. I talked about it yesterday. I feel like we should have a signing window, not a signing day. But outside of the typical dominating teams that we see just get NFL players, recycle them every year. Who stood out to you?
So it's different now that you have the transfer portal because you have to take that into account. It's not just the recruiting of high school kids. You have to also win the portal, which we've talked about ad nauseum. So I did some calculations here. There were 7 teams which finished inside the top 20 in high school on the high school recruiting board and inside the top 20 on the transfer portal board. That is Miami, finished 4th overall, 8th in the transfer portal. Oklahoma, 7 overall, 10 in the transfer portal. Oregon, 8 and 5. USC, 11 and 4. Michigan finished 16 and 1st overall in the transfer portal. Florida State, 17, 2nd overall in the portal. And then TCU, 19 and 11, with the Auburn Tigers coming in at 20th overall and 21st, so just outside there. And if you look at that, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 7 are first-year head coaches at their schools. Cristobal, Venables, Dan Lanning, Sonny Dykes, and Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, and you look at the years that Miami had with Mario Cristobal and Oklahoma had with Brent Venables. There's a lot of panic from those fan bases. This is going to calm you down a little bit. I mean, look, Oklahoma got that linebacker transfer from Indiana who's got a little brother that's a stud too. So, it's got to be a nice mix, a nice blend. To quote one of the greatest CEOs of all time, Mr. Cheezel, it's a dandelion nettle blend. And that's what you need. Because when you had transfers, you would try and use those to fill a couple holes in the boat, grad transfers, or maybe they got to come sit a year and you're counting them forward to the next class. And so you look at your roster and you say, all right, I want a percentage of this from the high school, I want a percentage of that, because it's roster management. And we don't talk enough about roster management in the college game. It's all anybody talks about in the NFL. I mean, when you look at roster management and free agency, which goes to roster management, we talk about recruiting a ton, but not the structure of the roster. The reason that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, what the blueprint is, it's not just all right, everybody be accountable and this, that, and the other, and a plan for knowing where guys are at and what they're doing. It's about roster management. How do you manage the roster? How do you get the roster to a point where you're not losing too much at one time at an important spot? Or if you do, you're able to supplement that because you've done it in recruiting and knew that you were losing it. It's roster management. That is the key to the castle. Getting the players in and developing them. We always talk about what? The 3 pillars of a great program, right? It's recruiting, it's development, and it's culture. And you can have none without the other. You can have culture, but if you don't have good enough players, it doesn't matter if you guys are just doing push-ups all the time and reading the Bible. You're not going to win. So with guys like Brent Venables that understand this, with guys like Mario Cristobal that understand this, it is going to take a little time for them to get that roster not only back to be able to compete, but to full strength, where all of a sudden you're just now, I call it building the machine, right? These guys can build the machine, and there's no need to panic. I was pretty impressed with Matt Rule, I'm not going to lie, because, again, it's not the sexiest name out there in recruiting, let's be honest. And then Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Thought he did a really good job. So, again, look, you've got to win. We'll see how they do on the field in year 2. But if you're a Miami fan, if you are an Oklahoma fan, or if you are a fan of a team that maybe didn't have the greatest first year under a new head coach, and you had a good year in recruiting in the portal and in high school, you have to feel a lot better right now. But
what do you think?
What do you think, B?
I would go Bama. I mean,
well, yes, I'm talking about out. That's easy. I mean, McDonald's is going to do good today.
Oops. Can I say what I need to say? I'm just gonna do that every time you interrupt
Say
me.
what you need to say?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do that every time. Well, a lot of things getting said about Saban. The dynasty's dead. You're losing all this in the portal. And what does he do at 71 years old? He signs the number 1 running back in the country, the number 1 safety, number 1 edge, number 1 offensive lineman, number 1 linebacker, and number 1 D lineman. Surprise, surprise, the dynasty's not dead. They're still just reloading, fellas. So give me Bama. There's a lot of talk about it. So I'm taking Bama as my pick.
Well, they did sign like a year 5 NCAA online dynasty class.
And 2 of those kids from Carver from the same high school.
Yeah.
We're going to pair up
Rousseau
together.
and Smith?
Yes, Rousseau and Smith. Exactly.
Did Carver give up a point the whole year? They had both.
They better not have. But I really like your point talking about, I feel like the best college football teams need to be built. Like the identity needs to be there from the high school recruiting classes, and you develop that and use these transfers as sort of ancillary pieces here and there. I'm looking at the way Georgia is doing this right now, like building this elite, this elite team, class after class after class. Then you bring in a piece if you need. We even saw JT Daniels coming to Georgia. He didn't even play.
Yeah,
right?
He's going to Rice.
You look at a team just like a Michigan, Harbaugh starting to stack some of these classes on, but you bring in an edge like an E.B. Okie who was making play after play after play down the stretch of the season, or even the center Ola Timmy, Remington Award winner. Like that's the way I think you can have the most success. And lo and behold, those 2 teams just may play in the national championship together. It's not this sort of mercenary, let's just go free agent this thing and bring in all the best players we can, maybe in your first or second year, but you still cannot overlook the value of stacking those young classes on top of each other for when you graduate people.
Well, it's like I say, you want to use those transfers to plug up holes in the boat. You don't want to build the boat out of them.
That's how you do it.
That's the best way. And again, it's all circumstantial. When you take over, where you take over, you may have to be, for example, Hugh Freeze and Auburn. You may have to be a little transfer portal heavy in year 1, especially if you're taking over a roster that's not very good. And Brian Harsin left a roster that's not very good, let's be honest.
Well, you'll take good players however you can get them.
Get them.
Especially early.
But to get the engine revving like the way you want it, mostly high school kids that you can develop, plug holes in the boat with transfers are able to come in. And that way, you kind of, it's almost like a built-in way to avoid that big down year.
Yes.
Right? The one where you're like, all right, here we go. Our class is mostly seniors now, senior quarterbacks, senior laden offensive lines, senior guys on the edge on defense, and all of a sudden you lose all that and you're having to rebuild and try and wait for another 3 years to get those guys that are older. Now you can just put another elf on the shelf and go after it again.
Was there a school that you thought in the transfer portal sort of disappointed you this cycle?
Not really disappointed.
Notre Dame.
Really? They were top 10?
Notre
Dame didn't do anything to get me really excited.
Well, they got a bunch
though.
snatched by him from Oregon, but I thought Notre Dame did a pretty good job. I mean, Marcus Freeman's going to recruit well at Notre Dame. I thought Florida State did a really good job too, man. I'll tell you who's the biggest disappointment overall. It's Ole Miss.
That's what I had.
Ole Miss.
35th overall and 30th in the transfer portal. And the reason I put them as my disappointment was because Lane Kiffin is such a great recruiter. Not only from high school kids, but in the portal as well. Well, I mean, what do you make of that? Just the end of the season drama?
Yeah, he sabotaged himself. You trolled your own fan base.
Yeah.
Like, you trolled your own fan base. You got paid for it. But guess what? Those recruits saw that.
Okay.
Those parents saw that. So again, it's cool. It's all funny on social media. He's hashtag stay in the SIP. Well, I mean, stay in the what? You're 35th?
35th, yes, 35th overall, 30th in the portal.
It's not good.
Ew.
Hey, YouTube, what's up? Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you turn that notification bell on. It's the gift that keeps on giving. We're like the Santa Claus of sports podcasts and shows.